Absolutely.
All right, I think we're live.
Hello, everyone on Facebook. Welcome to another masterclass here with Jill's office. We have a really great topic we're going to talk about today. And if you are a business owner and you handle any credit card transactions at all, you're going to want to listen to this because we have some good stuff. And we have a really great guest speaker today. We're going to talk about how to avoid credit card disputes. And if you do come across any, how to kind of tackle them and how to approach them and take care of those problems. So,
right. That's like one of those things that when you're starting a business, you don't really think that you're going to have to deal with, but then probably sooner you expect something comes up and then it's like, what do I do?
Yeah. And the larger you grow, you're going to have to deal with them just more and more. So.
Yeah, we're excited for this topic today, and we're excited to have James here with us. James, so I think James's background is so interesting because he grew up with a family in HVAC, right?
HVAC, landscaping, and pressure washing. So 3 different companies,
all 3.
3 different uncles.
Okay, so you had a little of all of it. So you kind of helped out with some businesses, right? Got kind of experience in the trade.
Yes.
And then decided to go into accounting and is now the numbers guru. He does everything with taxes, bookkeeping, accounting, payroll, all that fun stuff. So, what's fun about James is he's got the perspective of the service industry and the different things that business owners in that deal with, but then also has that accounting perspective. So we're excited today, James. Thanks for joining us.
Absolutely. I'm glad to be here with y'all, Michelle, and I think it's going to be a great little treat for today's meeting. Hopefully we'll get a lot of information out there.
Yeah, and as always, if you have any questions for James as we go through this, feel free to comment and we will share and discuss. So let's dig in, James. Let's talk about this.
Absolutely. Let me get my screen share going. Can you see right there? Okay, perfect. Just wanted to make sure y'all could see that. Awesome. So as Nicole said, today we're going to be talking about credit card disputes. And unfortunately, it is a necessary evil. We're in a world nowadays that you really don't have much of a choice but to take credit cards. But when you take a credit card, you have that liability. Almost when you take any payment, you have a liability of a customer either putting a stop payment on a check or something like that. But with credit cards, it's so easy for a customer to dispute that charge. So what do we need to do to protect ourselves to make sure we have as much of a leg up as possible to not have disputes put against us? And if a dispute is put against us, how do we win that? And that's what we're going to talk about today, because it is a necessary evil of doing business in the 21st century. So
fun fact here, sorry, I just heard this morning that Stripe, which is I think one of the biggest credit processors out there, they're now valued at $90 billion, which is more than Facebook, is more than, gosh, like, I mean, they were naming all these different companies and I was a little blown away. I mean, I know that's a big thing, but that was, I mean, they're one of the most profitable companies out there. So, I mean, but it's true because everyone needs, you can't be in business without having a way to take credit cards. It's just part of business.
Absolutely. I mean, it shows how prolific credit cards are, and more specifically Stripe in general is with everything, because so many of these tech platforms use Stripe. And so most of what I'm going to talk about here is going to cover multiple different platforms, because I know your pros don't just use one platform. You've got pros on ServiceMate, you've got Service Fusion, House Call, Jobber, you've got multiple different locations here. And even those that aren't in the service industry, most of these digital platforms now are using Stripe. So a lot of what I'm going to talk about is going to help you guys out, because I'm going to be talking from the Stripe perspective. So we're going to talk about 4 main things today. First thing is ways to avoid these disputes. Second, and it's going to be real short, but it's still something I like to put in there, is ACH and check payments. I know that's not the main topic, but it's a payment type. Y'all still need to know how to deal with it. And then how are we going to record things in QuickBooks? Sorry, I'm an accountant. We're talking about QuickBooks today. If you're not happy with that, I don't know, ask questions. I'll talk about something else. And then the most important thing, what do you need to do? What do you need to have to defend yourself during a dispute? So when a dispute comes up, what do you need to do to make sure that you can win that dispute? So as Michelle already said, quick introduction to me. I started working with my family back in 2009 in the home services businesses. And I have taken a focus of providing technically advanced business advice for the 21st century. So we're not talking about pen and paper here. We're not talking about keeping boxes of receipts or anything like that. I'm the accountant that as much of it that can be digital and as much of it that we can automate, that's what I want to work with my clients on. So I have my advanced certified pro advisor. So that is the top tier you can get with QuickBooks, along with an elite status with them, which means that I service over 100 clients with them. So I see a lot of different things and work with a lot of different people. And I keep certifications in multiple different platforms. House Call Pro, Notify, Service Titan, Jobber, ServiceMate, Service Fusion, just to name a few of the service-based ones, but also SOS Inventory, HubDoc, Receipt Bank, T-Sheets, Live Plan. So a bunch of different softwares out there to help my clients and come up with these ideas and what I work with clients on so that we can talk about these credit card disputes today. So what are some ways to avoid disputes? And guys, as Michelle said, post questions in here. I'm going to pause every once in a while and answer questions. So if you have a question, post it in here. I'll be happy to answer it. I might table it for later because I might hit on it later, but I'll definitely get it answered for you. So what are disputes? Well, unfortunately, they're inevitable and they're unavoidable. There's no way that you're going to be able to avoid them. You can be the smallest company in the world and you can have them. You can be the largest company in the world and have them. It's going to happen, but you can always take steps to make it easier to win and to make it more difficult for your clients to want to dispute. So disputes are all about documentation. The more documentation you have, and I'm sure those of you that have accountants have probably heard this a million times because for some weird reason, accountants are very particular about documentation. We like it a lot. I'm not 100% sure why, but the more documentation you have, the better and the more defended you're going to be. Make sure the first thing you want to make sure, whoever you're using for your payment processor, make sure your descriptor clearly identifies your business. Whenever a credit card is charged, there's always a descriptor there that says such and such business, whatever, and they know what it is. You want to make sure that they understand that it's your business. And understand whatever software you're using or whatever processor you're using, understand how to set up that descriptor. Most of them will take your business name and they will set it up automatically for you. But if you're not certain, reach out to their support system and make sure you understand that, because you need to make sure that what your clients see hit their credit card is going to identify you, because if they don't know you, that's one of the first ways to get a dispute. The other thing is to make sure you have signed agreements. A lot of platforms out there, and I'm going to speak on House Call specifically real quick, but a lot of platforms out there like House Call allow you to have multiple signatures. Take the time, and I know Jobber does the same thing and several other platforms do, but take the time, make sure they accept a job, do an engagement letter and have them sign accepting that. Make sure they sign and accept the job before it's done, not just for the payment. So don't just run their card and have them sign. And if there's ever any changes that happen, if your guy's out there in the field doing something and he finds, hey, we were called out to do an HVAC service, but I found that your condenser's out and we need to replace your condenser. I've got one on my truck. We can go ahead and do it today. Make sure that your guys sign and recognize that, yes, that condenser is approved. Because if they don't sign and recognize that the client doesn't do that, they could always say, well, I didn't agree to that. I don't know why they charged me for it, even if they signed on the payment. So you need to make sure before you do the job that the client agrees to it. Do not ever accept payments on behalf of anyone. If the name on that card does not match the name, credit card that is, does not match the name of the person giving it to you or the signature of the person, do not take it. Because people will say all the time, well, my grandma, she gave me her card because this is her house. How do you know that it's grandma's card and her house and not someone that took the card? Technically, if that person is not an authorized user on the account, they can't use the card. So it's very easy, even if they had permission to run that card, it's very easy for the person to dispute that. And if you don't have proof that they approved it, the owner of the card approved the charge, you're almost guaranteed to lose that dispute, because then it's handled as a stolen card issue. Make sure the person using that card, don't hesitate to ask for an ID so that you know the person who is giving you that card is the person whose name is there. I'm sure, and not that it's as common as it used to be, but sometimes when you go someplace and you make a big purchase, they're going to say, hey, can I see your ID? Don't hesitate to ask that question. It's protection on yourself. Make sure that you send invoices and payment receipts to your clients. If your client doesn't get a receipt, they can say, hey, I never got a receipt confirming this. Yes, I might have approved it, but I never got a receipt confirming it. So I didn't know about this. So they may have known and approved you charging them, but if they didn't know that it actually went through, that's another thing they can use to dispute it. Digital records are so great in this. You've got phones, you've got Dropbox, you've got Receipt Bank, you've got so many different things that you can digitally handle this thing through. Go ahead and make sure you have digital records. Send things by email, because when there's an email, there's stamps there. When you send it through mail, well, I'm not sure about y'all, but during Christmas, UPS lost a lot of stuff. So if you send it through mail, if you send a receipt through mail, if you send a invoice through mail, there's no way to guarantee it got to them. Whereas by email, you've at least got the confirmation that it's sent to them. And even if they didn't receive it, that confirmation helps back you up as long as it says that you sent it. So digital records are super, super important and super great here. So real quick, I'm going to check, do we have any questions on that before I move forward?
Actually, I had a question really quick. I noticed that a lot of times making purchases online, especially because I make a lot of those, that when you do make a purchase, you get a confirmation page, and usually it'll say, thank you for your purchase. Your receipt will come through under, and then as a different name than the company you bought the item from. You know what I'm talking about? I see that really, really often actually with online purchases. Is that acceptable, or there's probably like umbrella company and then
So I'm going to use kind of like eBay. Let's use them as an example. They're a big online merchant, or even Amazon. You can buy things from a merchant, a company at Amazon, and that company has a license, an agreement with Amazon that Amazon kind of handles the sales process. And as long as the product isn't bad, the product isn't defective, Amazon kind of holds the course for credit card disputes and things like that. So same thing with eBay or PayPal, same thing with Etsy, that's the name of that thing, Etsy. So like these big retailers where you've got multiple companies there, they are hosting things. But when we're talking about small business, that small business is a little bit different. Even if you inform them of it, it's best to make sure that they know that the receipt, that they know that the invoice, that they know everything is coming from you. Now, if you absolutely can't make sure that it shows ABC HVAC or Jim Bob's Plumbing or whatever, make sure that the client knows it's on the invoice or somewhere there. Hey, Receipts are going to come from here. This is going to show on your credit card statement as X. That way they know beforehand, just so that they know where everything's coming from.
My question is, and I'm not sure if you've run into people who have like best practice in how to handle this. So say you go out to do a job, they're paying for it with their grandma's, credit card or whatever, and you realize this. What would you say to them? What if they don't have another card? Is it better to just take that and not get paid at all? What would you do?
It's very tricky there, because what you run into is you kind of, at this point, if you're taking payment, honestly, the job's probably done. So if you don't take the payment, then you've got to invoice them and you risk the chance of potentially not getting paid.
Right.
If you do take the payment, you run the chance of something going on. So the first thing that I always try to do is see if grandma is home. Let's see if she's home and get her verbal approval. If grandmom's not home, or maybe it's mom and mom's at work, go ahead, don't hesitate to say, hey, can I call your mother and get confirmation from her? This is why, and Jill's office is great for this, but your guys in the field aren't going to do this, but finding a phone system out there that records everything, because if you call and the mom picks up and they answer as so-and-so, it's the mom, and you ask them, hey, do you authorize your son to use your credit card today to pay for this, and you have that recorded, that can go back to defend you even if they dispute it in future.
That's good. I like that. Call them. That's a good answer.
So it's hopefully not something that happens a lot of the time, but again, the more documentation, the more ways that you can make sure, yes, I approve this, the better off you're going to be. And yes, it sounds like a little extra footwork, but 5-10 extra minutes of footwork for every few jobs is a lot better than a whole day devoted to gathering everything to defend yourself. Because that's kind of the contra to this, is if it gets disputed, now you've got to spend more than that 5 minutes to gather all this information.
And so much of this is just systems. It's like once you get it set up once that your name's on there correctly, it's not like you have to keep resetting it. Once you get it set up once that they automatically send an invoice, you just gather their email. Once you set it up with your text that, hey, this is the protocol, this is what you do, then it's just a system. It's not even the emotional toll of feeling weird about it either. It's just this, the first few times you might feel weird, but then, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and that's one of the great things about these digital systems and moving off of pen and paper, is the fact that so much of it you can automate, and you can set these practices up and train your guys on this and make these little tweaks very easily.
Right.
Awesome. So moving on to ACH and stop check payments. There are several systems out there, because Stripe allows it, that allow clients to pay through ACH. They put in their bank account number and their routing number. Any ACH payment, any dispute, any fraud claim on an ACH payment cannot be fault. So unlike credit cards, there's no way to fight a dispute or a fraud claim on an ACH payment. So be very cautious with accepting ACH payments. This is not Stripe's fault. This is not House Call's fault, Jobber's fault, anyone's fault. This is legally how it was written, because the one thing to keep in mind with ACH is ACH was designed in the 80s. We've come a long way in 40 years, and ACH hasn't. And ACH is kind of still in that back alley. And I'm not talking about Zillow. I'm not talking about Venmo. I'm not talking about Square. I'm talking about the old-fashioned bank account number, bank routing number, drafting money out of a bank account. That's how old we're going here, which is still very common. And ACH stands for Automatic Clearinghouse. But if a client ever claims fraud on it, it's automatically ruled in their favor. So take that into consideration before you allow ACH payments. And even if you're going to allow it, if you feel that a client's a little wishy-washy, probably not the best payment option for them, being honest. With stop payment checks, again, there's really not much you can do there. If someone puts a stop payment, you either have to get a new check for them or they need to release that stop payment. So both of these, if this ever happens, you're going to have to go directly to the customer or through a collection agency, and you're going to have to discuss this and work this out directly with the customer. This isn't something that you can use Stripe for. You can use a lawyer. Well, you can use a lawyer. You can send demand letters, but there's not really much you can do here other than working with the customer directly. And ultimately, if you can't collect it, you're just going to have to write that money off as a loss, as a debt. Kind of sucks, but when it comes to checks and things, they are much easier to dispute. And a lot of people all the time say, oh, well, I prefer checks because it's my money. I'm not getting charged fees for it. It's harder to dispute and yada, yada, yada. Not really. Checks are a lot easier to come up with an issue on than credit cards. So how to record, if you ever get a disputed fee in QuickBooks, how do you record this? So it's really going to depend a lot on your software. There's no perfect answer here because each system is a little bit different. However, most software, especially if they're using Stripe, they're going to go ahead and draft a future payment. So if you've got credit card payments coming in that total $1,000 and someone disputed a $500 charge, they're going to go ahead and automatically draft that $1,000 of payments for $500. And they're going to pull that right off the top. Most of these systems, speaking specifically for like House Call Pro, Jobber, Service Titan, they don't put in a refund, not automatically into QuickBooks. So you're going to have to issue one directly through QuickBooks so that you can properly record that deposit, because you need to be able to go in there and you need to reduce that deposit, because basically what happened there was it's a refund. Not that you meant to refund it. However, it is a refund. Do not issue this refund through your dispatching software. Never do that, because if you issue a refund through there, they can and generally will refund that money on top of the disputed fee, because a dispute doesn't trigger a refund with them. A dispute is just, hey, this happened, we're drafting your account, now you need to take action. So only issue refunds in QuickBooks, not in the actual dispatching program. Real quick side note here, I'm going to be talking specifically about QuickBooks Online because all of the programs that I work with are certified to integrate with QuickBooks Online, and QuickBooks Desktop was not designed to integrate with any programs. I do also use Zero Accounting, but it doesn't integrate with as many programs as QuickBooks Online. So I'm going to try to speak more to the masses here than the specifics. So if you have specific questions about your programs, I'm happy to talk with you guys about it if we have some time at the end. Most disputes will also incur a fee, especially through Stripe. Stripe charges, last time I checked, it was like a $35 dispute resolution fee that they automatically charge you. And that's going to come out as a completely different expense. They're just going to charge you, and generally it's not Stripe charging you, it's going to be your dispatch system, House Call, Jobber, whoever that charges you that. Make sure that you understand with your processor what they do and don't charge for, so that you know what to do in this situation. So if they don't charge fees, great, make sure you know that. If you do, make sure you understand when they charge fees, how those fees are charged, and if they're refunded, because some systems will refund it, some will not, even if you win the dispute. Also, make sure you understand your system's dispute processing method, because Stripe, throughout is generally fairly consistent, but each program has its own small little quirks. So you need to know their dispute processing method so that you are prepared for what they're going to ask you for, the documentation and everything like that, without having to go look for anything there. So that's very important to remember. Refunds in QuickBooks do not open an invoice back up to payment. If you issue a refund, there's no amount due. There's nothing here. Make sure in your dispatch system that you tag or you make a note on that job that it's disputed so that you can either go through there and you can make the customer like say, we're not going to service this customer anymore because you didn't win the dispute, or even if you did, it's not worth your time, things like that. But also you can track your disputed charges there. Most of these programs allow you to tag jobs so that you can run reports off of those tags. If you go ahead and do that, then go ahead and duplicate the invoice. Either make a note that this is a duplicated invoice, and that way it shows that money is due in your dispatch system, but it's also due in QuickBooks, because again, refunds, the system's not going to refund it, so it's not going to show any money due there. And QuickBooks isn't going to show any money due, so we have to create a new invoice here. The refund in QuickBooks is going to counter that first invoice, so it's going to zero that out on your income, so you're not seeing any losses there or anything like that, and you're not receiving more income by doing this. This is helping you to keep your AR accurate, and you know in your dispatch system and QuickBooks what you're owed, because since it's disputed, it is owed to you until you either can't get it back or it's paid back and the dispute is reconciled in your way. So go ahead and duplicate that invoice, add line items, do something so that you now have that same $500 available again to charge. If you're modifying the original invoice to duplicate everything, this is going to show that your AR is accurate there. So both of these, either duplicating or modifying to duplicate everything on the original invoice, will make your AR correct. If it is resolved in your favor, make sure to receive a payment to that so that you can now A, do the bank deposit in future, but B, in both systems, it's paid, because you need that payment to do a bank deposit. And go ahead, depending on your system, pay it by other, pay it by check, anything but credit card, because credit card, they're going to want to charge a credit card. Well, you're going to automatically get that money back. If it's not resolved in your favor, that's when we either talk to your accountant and write it off as bad debt, or we do a journal entry to write it off as bad debt. Some processors, if you win, they're going to refund their dispute charges. So when that initial charge comes in, make sure that you go ahead and record it to a dispute charge or a bank charge account and record the refund there. Depending on the processor, I know House Call Pro does this. Instead of physically refunding it to you, what they do is they credit your account so that the next month you're not charged as much for your House Call Pro bill. So it depends. Again, each processor, each dispatch system is going to handle this a little bit differently here. I personally do not recommend having a separate general ledger account for disputes, as if you set this up correctly, these should be so minimal and so uncommon that it's not worth a GL account. They might happen 1 or 2 times a year, but unless you have something occurring 2-3 times a month, you don't need your own GL account for it. If a dispute is resolved in your favor, you will need to deposit that money into your account. It's going to have to be deposited from QuickBooks back into your bank account. So you will need to accept payment on the second invoice, and then you're going to have to go ahead and deposit that money. Most of these systems that will auto reconcile your credit cards will not do this auto reconciliation. You're going to have to reconcile. You're going to have to make this bank deposit yourself. So I'm going to pause real quick again for any other questions.
I did see earlier that you said if you were to win a dispute in your favor to receive the payment in a different form other than a credit card.
Mhm.
Is that what I read? Okay. What if that's all that they have? I mean, I don't know how many people have checks anymore.
Well, the point of that is in these processing systems, you can receive payment from multiple different forms: credit card, check, cash, or other, or more than that, depending on your system. Those are just kind of the key four. Whenever you're in these dispatch systems, if you choose credit card, they want you to enter credit card information. We're not receiving this payment because you receive like you want it. We're not receiving it because you're receiving a new payment. We're receiving it because you're getting that money back. And so we need to have money, a payment sitting in there so that we can deposit it into your bank account and so that it matches up with the physical bank deposit. If we don't have that money coming in, we're going to be missing $500 that we're not going to be able to reconcile to fully make a bank deposit there on it.
Okay.
Yeah. So, and I don't know if you're getting into this, but so, okay, so the process is you get some sort of notification that someone is disputing. You need to proactively submit things, right? It's not like they're you saying, hey, do you have any arguments against this? So you have to proactively like say
What's
it.
the first step?
Yeah, like what are we going through that? Look, I mean, that's
Absolutely. That's about where we're going.
excited.
So the documentation here is super important. Whenever a dispute is filed, you're going to get an email and you're going to basically, whether it be an email, a notification, it's going to be something that says, hey, a dispute has been filed. Please provide X, or please defend for whatever. You generally have like 48 to 72 hours to provide that information. So 2 to 3 days to get this there. That's why all this documentation and making sure that you're ready ahead of time is important, because if you're ready ahead of time, it's super quick to get all this together and it doesn't take too long. Once you get that notification, the first thing to do is call that customer, say, hey, you just disputed this charge. I wanted to check in. We were just out at your house on such and such date. We did this, we yada, yada, yada. Did you mean to dispute it? Because that's always going to be the quickest option, is working with the customer and figuring out what the problem is, whether the customer was unhappy with the work, whether they didn't realize what was going on, so that you can go ahead and try to work it out with them. Because the customer, they can go in and quickly undispute a charge. The minute that they undispute a charge, you get that money back. And that can take one phone call, so an hour. Whereas in a dispute process, even though you're required to send things in within 48, 72 hours, maybe a week max, generally it takes a month or two to resolve it. And even from there, then it takes another few months for you to actually get the money. So the average dispute is going to take 3 or 4 months for you to get your money. So try to resolve with that client first, that customer, because that's quick money. Even though it's a phone call and you may not want to talk with them because they disputed a charge, at least you're getting your money quickly instead of months down the road. If talking with your customer doesn't result in anything, if it doesn't give you anything, you don't make any progress, you will need to provide all the information. Depending on the type of dispute, whether it was a lost card, a stolen card, a unapproved charge, each of these is going to kind of have their own different things that you want to have. But the recurring things you want to have here is a signed agreement to the job. So an engagement letter, a estimate, something saying, yes, we agree to this. And thus any changes that happen, that's what we talked about at the beginning, signing before you start the job. A signed completion of the job saying, yes, we have completed the job and we're happy with it. So before your guys even leave, make sure they sign saying, we've completed, there's no issues, we're happy with it. This helps you with disputes, but if that client ever calls back a few hours later and it's like, hey, this is horrible, yada, yada, yada. You've got that signed thing saying they were happy with the job. And it's like, what happened that this changed? You're going to need the original invoice and you're going to need the payment receipt along with proof of sending that to them and proof of work done. So when you're out on that job site, when you're doing whatever, take pictures. Take a picture of, if you're repairing an HVAC unit, take a picture of it beforehand, take a picture of tearing it apart, take a picture of the pieces going in, take a picture of putting it back together, picture, 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 picture. Provide proof of work done to show that you actually did something. Because even if you have an invoice or payment, they're going to want to see, hey, you actually did something, because you can invoice someone and pay someone for something, even though you didn't do something. Take pictures. Ooh.
Sorry. And this is probably a tangent, which we don't have to dive into, but I mean, we do have some sites that deal, maybe their marketer deal more on, a non-tangible kind of service. Mm-hmm. What do you suggest in that instance of proving your work?
Non-tangible services, it's really kind of difficult. I would say I'm a perfect example, but when I'm doing things, I'm leaving a footprint, I'm leaving audit logs, I'm leaving things like that. When we're dealing with non-tangible services, it becomes a little more difficult to prove something. I'm going to say, like a car wash, depending on the cleanliness of that car in the first place, you could be brought out there to clean the car and it really didn't need a wash because it wasn't that dirty. How do you prove that you actually washed it? It's difficult, let's be honest. You're going to need to do what works for your business to whatever, and I can't speak specifically for each business just because each business is different, but whatever you view as what you provide to your clients, make sure you have some way of proving that to your clients that, hey, we did this. Even if it's just a document, attach a document instead of pictures because you can't really take pictures, or something like that. The proof of purchase is generally not as necessary if you have everything else, but it's just kind of that final nail in the coffin that it definitely swings it your way.
Got it.
So make sure you're taking pictures, you're whatever to help prove that you're doing a job, that you're doing a project. Make sure you're getting signatures, approval, payment completion, just signatures wherever. The more signatures you have, the better you are. Make sure your customers are aware of your refund policies. Put on your term and conditions what your refund policies are, or on the bottom of your invoice or somewhere exactly, hey, if there's an issue, this is how we handle refunds. That way they understand that, because a lot of times dispute companies like to know your refund policies, because people can dispute a credit card charge because they didn't get a refund. Well, if they didn't meet your refund policy, that can help to defend you. Documentations of attempts to communicate with the customer. Anytime, if a dispute comes through, anytime you call them, you email them, anything to resolve it, document it, record it, make notes, have the emails, and have all of that to provide to the company to defend you during the dispute, because that shows not only that you tried to resolve it, it can also show things that the customer may not want. Now, don't just record a phone call without them knowing. Again, most states require you to know. Yeah, most states require you to know whether you're being recorded. So you've got to make the comment, hey, this is James Griner with Water for Business Solutions calling you on a recorded line because I want to talk to you about this dispute. Something like that. That way they know. And then documentations of when services were done. They don't want to just know what was done, whether it was done, who it was done for, whether it was approved. They want to know when it was done. So make sure you have those timestamps, depending on your software, start and finish stamps, things like that, so you can provide that documentation. So that is what I have here, and I'm going to go ahead and open the floodgates to questions.
I think, do you have any other ones, Nicole?
I actually was thinking about something you said earlier. You were going over QuickBooks about not creating like a general ledger for, was it for refunds or disputes? And it kind of just had me thinking, I guess you said you might get maybe 1 or 2 a year or something like that. You should, unless you have so many every single month, it wouldn't be worth it to create that general ledger. But I would also probably think that if you were getting so many disputes, you probably need to go back and look at your processes and your communication to your clients or your customers, what your actual service is, what your terms are, because that looks like that might be just a deeper problem in communicating what it is you're providing. Right, first thing that came to mind.
Yeah, absolutely. It's if you were having a ton of disputes, again, they're inevitable, they're unavoidable, but that doesn't mean you should be having a ton of them. They should exist. I'm not going to deny that, but it shouldn't be so many that you're pulling your hair out and banging your head against the wall because every single day you're getting a disputed charge or you have to deal with it multiple times a month. Most people, yes, they're going to see this, but depending on the size of your business, it's going to be like 1% of your business. So if you do 100 invoices a year, you might have one dispute. And I mean might. If you do 1,000, you might have 10. If you have these processes set up in the first place, it significantly reduces the risk of disputes. Then the only thing you have with disputes is those unscrupulous customers who are like, oh, I just want free work. And that's why we want to have everything else here so that if you have that person who wants free work, which let's be honest, they exist, you can defend that and they don't have a leg to stand on.
Do you know, and I don't know if this is something, I'm just curious if you even know this. I mean, there really isn't any repercussion to the consumer, right? I mean, by a credit card company, they could dispute 100 charges in a month. Like, are they ever going to be like, okay, wait a second, maybe we're going to drop him, or there's no ding to their credit? I'm doing, I wish there were some consequences to consumers, but there aren't, are there?
If someone regularly disputes things, it can raise flags, and it can cause them to lose their card. But it takes so much of that because they're not just staring at this one customer. You've got to raise flags in the first place to even have your attention drawn to you. Then they're going to start looking at you. And even once they start looking at you, it's going to take a little bit of time before they do it. So you can have unscrupulous customers that have a card for 2-3 years before it gets taken away because of issues like this. And then they can just go to another card provider and get a new card and start it all over again. Honestly, the only ding to your credit is the fact that you got to get a new credit card and it's an inquiry on your credit account. That's about it. Now you can file something that can be done and should be done on larger jobs is if you get a dispute, go ahead and file a lien, or file whatever you can legally in your state against. I'm not talking about for a $60, $70 service visit or something like that. I'm talking about for like a $5,000 install or something there. Even if it's disputed, resolve said dispute, but also file a lien, because that lien, depending on your state, will stay with that property, and that will actually be a consequence to the customer.
And so, I mean, is that something you have to have in your terms and conditions, or it just depends on the state whether
it really depends on the state? I generally recommend providing terms and conditions that are state to state acceptable, mainly because I work in so many different states. So I know all the laws, and I won't say I know all the laws, but I know enough of them. And so I just kind of make sure that we meet everything that we can. The more that you put in your terms and conditions, the more you're protected. They understand what your refund policies are, if you'll file liens, when you'll file them, dispute resolution, things like that. It protects you. It may give you this mile-long thing at the bottom, but if it's there and they sign payment for it, agree to the job, everything like that, it's basically like signing an agreement, signing a contract with you. So that can help you stand up legally in court. I'm not a lawyer, I'm an accountant. That's two different things. talk with a lawyer. But from a base perspective, yes, terms and conditions can save you a lot of headache.
Sure. Makes a lot of sense.
We do have a question from Veronica. She is asking if there is a common way that you're notified about a dispute charge by the credit card company or your processing software. She said she knows House Call Pro handles disputes, but a lot of people don't notice that it's happening.
Correct. So for House Call Pro specifically, they are going to send an email to the main account person. So whoever basically started the account, that's going to be where the email goes. The other thing is always make sure you're keeping up to date on your bank deposits and everything, because if you're keeping up to date on your bank deposits and you're following your records, even if you miss an email on a dispute, you're going to see it in your bank deposits. You're going to see that the My Money or a bank deposit came in low or something like that through whatever system, because they always give you these payouts and they show you what was paid out and where it went. So if you're keeping up with that and you're doing that on a semi-regular, even twice a week basis, that's going to help you a lot in making sure you catch all of this stuff.
Awesome. That's worth either bookkeeping or getting a bookkeeper just to help stay on top of all that stuff, for sure.
Oh, absolutely. Keeping up with your books can save you a lot, both on the customer side, because you're able to catch things like this and you're able to catch bad customers and missed payments, and you're able to catch like checks that were lost because a employee never turned them in. I get that excuse a lot. Or you're able to catch things that you didn't realize hit your credit card and you're able to dispute them and claim them there.
Awesome. Really valuable stuff there. I learned a lot. I didn't know that whole thing about the checks, especially that like there's really no dispute. That was interesting. So very valuable information. Thank you so much, James. We appreciate you sharing. And everyone, if you'd like more information, please check out James' website, waterfordbusiness.com. And tell us a little bit everything that you do. I know we talked a little bit at the beginning, but
Absolutely.
What else do you do?
So at Waterford, it's actually a team of us, and we work specifically in the home service industries, providing almost any financial thing that you need. Bookkeeping, taxes, business planning, budgeting, planning software, planning conversions to softwares, data services to like transfer you from an old-fashioned system like WinTAC or like Field Edge or something like that onto one of these digital platforms, or helping you develop specific reports, because some of these softwares don't provide super editable reports. And then we're always adding new additions. We're always finding new ways to help out our clients. And all of our staff have a passion for helping people, and more specifically, helping the home service industries. And they go through a very, very rigorous vetting process before we bring them on, just to make sure that they meet our standards and are going to help you guys out to achieve your goals. So if y'all need any help, whether you just have questions, you need help, you've been looking for someone to help you, I love helping people. Even if you don't need a bookkeeper, feel free to call us, to go to our website, to email us, and we'll be happy to email you back, call you and talk with you for a few minutes, whatever we can to assist you. For those of y'all who just like snail mail, you can send snail mail. It takes a while. We don't respond very fast either, but email and website tend to be the best options there.
Awesome. Well, thank you, James. We appreciate it. Lots of valuable stuff.
Absolutely, guys. And one thing that I'm doing with this little thing here, anyone that comes by the end of April and mentions Jill's office to us, we're going to give y'all free onboarding services and 10% off bookkeeping services for a year. Or if you just need cleanup or advisory, we're going to give y'all 10% off of that just by talking about Jill's office and mentioning this webinar.
Awesome. Thank you. That's a great savings. Awesome. Thank you, James. We appreciate that. Well, we appreciate you being here today. And thanks everyone who joined us. All right. Have a good one. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, James.
Bye, guys.